So the learning objective today is I can recall the main events of the Greek myth Theseus and the Minotaur.
Hi Year 3, so I just thought I'd start by saying that we hope that you had a really nice half-term break and that all of us Year 3 teachers are really missing seeing all of you and teaching all of you, but we're really proud of all the hard work that you're doing, and we've absolutely loved seeing the work that you've been sending into us, so please do keep sending your work into us this term because it's great and makes us feel really proud of you. So this term, we're going to start with a new book by Marcia Williams called Greek Myths. Now, Marcia Williams' books, you might have seen some of her different books before. They're really great because they're kind of like comic strips. So she tells stories, but she draws lots of pictures and little captions underneath to tell the stories. And the stories that we're going to be reading about are going to be Greek myths. So what are Greek myths? So the ancient Greeks like to tell lots of stories, and these stories are called myths. And in these myths, they often had lots of kind of horrible, scary creatures, mythical creatures they were called, these made-up creatures. They often had their gods getting involved in the stories, and quite often they'd have a kind of brave hero who would defeat the horrible creature. And that's certainly the case in the myth that we're going to be focusing on today. So you might have noticed in the learning objective it said that we're going to be looking at the myth called Theseus and the Minotaur, which is great because it's one of my favourite Greek myths. It's quite an exciting one, really. So I'm going to read the story in a minute to you, but just before I do that, I think it's quite important that you know what activity we're going to be doing next. So today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing our own shorter version of a comic strip. So we're really going to need to know the main events of the story. Now, I'll help you with that after I've read the story, but please make sure as I'm reading you're really concentrating to what happens at each part. Okay, here goes.
Theseus and the Minotaur. King Minos of Crete had long hated the people of Athens, and you can see him here saying, "I'd like to see them all dead," and they're saying, "We'd be happy to oblige his soldiers." For they had killed his son when he took all the prizes at the Athenian Games. To prevent King Minos from waging war against them, they're thinking, how could we settle this without a war? Every 9 years, the Athenians sent 7 youths and 7 maidens to be sacrificed to the Minotaur. Now, 7 youths and 7 maidens just means 7 boys and girls. So every 9 years, they'd send 7 boys and 7 girls to be sacrificed to be eaten by this Minotaur. The Minotaur was half man and half bull and lived in the labyrinth on Crete. So he lived in a kind of maze, that's what a labyrinth is, on the island of Crete. And he's saying, you'd be hungry too if you only ate every 9 years. Theseus, son of Aegeus, this Theseus here, was angered by this cruelty. So he's angry that they're sending these children to be eaten by the Minotaur every 9 years. Bravely, he offered to join the next victims and try to kill the Minotaur. And so here's Theseus, there's the children, he's saying, don't worry, I'm going to save you. But the dog doesn't really think so, he's saying, fat chance. His father begged him not to go with the others. He's saying, oh no, you're not going, and he's saying, oh yes, I am. But Theseus insisted and prepared to set sail for Crete. Still saying, oh no, I'm not, oh you're not, oh yes, I am. But yes, he's getting ready to go, so you can see him here in the boat with the other children, and he's saying, don't worry, we'll be back. He hoisted a black sail as a sign of respect for the victims, but promised to return with a white sail raised as a sign of his success. So he's saying, when I come back to show that I've defeated the Minotaur, I'll put a white sail up to show that I've beaten the Minotaur. So here they are on their journey. Great storms battered the little ship on its journey to Crete. When Theseus finally landed, he found King Minos waiting with his daughter Ariadne, saying, land ahoy! Ariadne immediately fell madly in love with Theseus. You can see Ariadne there with hearts around her head. And she resolved to save him from the Minotaur and marry him. And you can see what she's looking for here. She's saying, now where did I put that sword and thread? That night, Ariadne, going quietly, crept softly past the guards. She gave Theseus a sword and a ball of magic thread to guide him out of the maze. So she's saying, wake up, giving him the sword and the ball of thread. Next day, the Athenians were thrown into the labyrinth, which remember is the kind of maze where the Minotaur lives. Once inside, Theseus tied one end of the thread to the door, you can see it there, so that he can find his way out, and set off in search of the Minotaur. And you can see the other children saying, "Let me out!" And they're saying, "Good luck," as Theseus marches off. And you can see that it looks a bit horrible in the labyrinth. We've got bats and bones and rats. The labyrinth was a confusing maze of cold, dark passages. Some led nowhere. Others took him deeper into the maze. The roar of the Minotaur grew louder. Suddenly, Theseus came face to face with the hideous monster. Roar! The struggle was long and fierce, for the Minotaur was enormously strong. But Theseus eventually drove his sword through its heart and it sank to the ground, dead. You can see here there's Theseus, and he's actually got, it's a bit gory, he's got the head of the Minotaur that he's carrying back through to show the other children that he's killed the Minotaur. Following the thread, Theseus traced his path back to the entrance of the labyrinth. Hearing the cheers of Theseus's friends, the other children cheering, Ariadne quickly unlocked the door. Then everyone ran for the ship and set sail for Athens. After a few days, they stopped at an island where Ariadne fell asleep. Theseus, unwilling to marry his enemy's daughter, left her sleeping on the sand, so he decides, actually, I don't think I want to marry you because you are my enemy's daughter. In all this excitement, Theseus forgot to change his sail from black to white. So what's his dad's going to think has happened? Because remember, he said, when I come back to show that I have killed the Minotaur, I'll change the sail to white. Meanwhile, his father, King Aegeus, watched anxiously for his ship. He's saying, Theseus should be home by now. Sighting the black sail and thinking the worst, he cast himself onto the rocks below. So a bit of a sad ending. As the Athenian parents celebrated their children's return, Theseus mourned the death of his father. So all of their parents, they're happy to see all the children who've been rescued by Theseus. So the sad but heroic Theseus became king of Athens and lived to win many more victories. So he's sad, but he's also heroic, and he then becomes king, and he's saying, I will be a great king in honour of my father. And these soldiers here are saying, Hail to King Theseus.
So today's learning objective was about recalling the main parts of the myth, Theseus and the Minotaur. So what we're going to do now is we're going to break the story down into 9 chunks. So we're going to kind of simplify it, and then what you're going to do is you're going to do your own kind of little comic strip version of Theseus and the Minotaur, remembering the main parts of the story. So to help you, I've had a go dividing it up into 9 boxes, and if you've seen the sheet for today and maybe printed it out, then that's got the 9 boxes for you with a little caption of what's happening in each box. But if you aren't able to print that out, don't worry, because you could just draw out for yourself the 9 boxes, which is exactly what I've done here.
So you can see here that I've just taken a piece of paper and divided it into 9 boxes, and then I've taken the story of Theseus and the Minotaur and divided that into 9 parts. Now if you can't read the labels very well here in each box, then don't worry, because they're all on the sheet for you to look at. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a little comic strip, a bit like Marcia Williams has done. So just like Marcia Williams has done, we want to have some lovely pictures with speech bubbles coloured in. If you've got time, to make it look really great, and this will help us remember the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. So we're just going to go through each section quickly, and then you can get started. So the first section, you've got Theseus volunteering to go and kill the Minotaur. So remember here, his dad, King Aegeus, isn't very keen. He doesn't want him to go, but Theseus is saying, no, I'm going to go and save the children. And then in box 2, the children and Theseus set sail for Crete. Remember, they have quite a kind of bumpy journey over to Crete. Number 3, they arrive and Theseus meets Ariadne. Remember, Ariadne falls straight away in love with Theseus and decides that she's going to go and find her ball of thread and sword to give Theseus. Number 4, the children and Theseus are thrown into the labyrinth, and that's where Theseus was first tying the thread to the door, and the children were not very happy to be thrown into the labyrinth. But Theseus looks quite confident, doesn't he? There, he's marching off. Box number 5, Theseus finds the Minotaur and they fight. This is the fight scene with Theseus ending up victorious and killing the Minotaur, and he actually takes off his head, doesn't he? A bit gory. Box number 6, they follow the thread out, or Theseus follows the thread out of the labyrinth. And then the children and Theseus escape on a boat and leave Ariadne behind. Box number 8, they return home on the boat with the black sail up. And box number 9, Theseus becomes king of Athens. So what I'd like you to have a go now at doing is turning this into our own version of Marcia Williams' comic strip. So I hope you have fun doing this.